All right, good afternoon, folks. Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the second session of TCIC 2019, the Complete Investing Conclave. This is the first edition of the conclave, and while we were networking during lunch, we got some wonderful feedback on the profiles of the speaker, and I'm sure that the second half of the entire event is going to be even more overwhelming for all of you because we have 5 prominent speakers who's going to set the stage on fire. Moving on, we have the 5th speaker. His name is Alok Jain. Alok Jain is a New Delhi-based SEBI-registered investment advisor and founder of the momentum investing platform weekendinvesting.com. He is also the founder of a long-short index strategy called as stairs-to-profits.com. Alok is an engineer from the Indian Institute of Technology, Delhi, and an MBA Finance from the University of Maryland. Alok has developed a keen sense for systematic, rule-based investing systems and technical trading. He is a keen observer of the psychology and behavioral aspects of the market and wanted to quantify and incorporate them in his investing. Weekendinvesting.com is a do-it-yourself advisory where Alok provides simple momentum-based individual models. On the similar lines, Alok is going to talk to us about a simplistic approach to self-managing portfolios. So with a huge round of applause, please help me welcome Alok Jain on the platform. Requesting the team Quantum to hand over the remote for the slide changer.
I have it.
Oh, you've had, okay. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I hope we are not all very sleepy after the nice lunch, and I hope to keep you awake. So I'm going to talk about how we can manage our portfolios in a more simplified way, and how our thought process actually can influence how we do it in a simple way. So probably I don't have anything new to share really, but I would like that my experiences can maybe give you some perspective when you look at your own journeys. So a bit about where I'm coming from. So straight out of college, I set up a stockbroking company along with some co-investors in '96. It was a long time back. I'm pretty old. And I, along with a couple of thousand clients that we dealt with over the next 2 decades, I was also trading and investing on my own prop book. So there was a lot of learnings that I was able to see both from the client side as well as from my own experience. And what I saw was that amongst traders, the success rates were really very poor. I mean, every year a new batch of traders would come and they would blow their money out, and another season would come. And very few people would have last, going from one year to the other and improving themselves. In the investing side also, the success rates were pretty low, and it seemed that luck was playing a very large reason for many of the portfolios that were doing well. Maybe somebody got it in inheritance, or somebody was able to get the right stock at the right time and sit through some of the market phases. Another learning here was that traders with simple strategies, which had very less number of complex moving parts, were able to handle the stress situations better. So the stress situations always will keep challenging you every now and then. And if your strategies are simple, then you are probably going to have a better chance at sailing through. And in the investor side, disciplined investors had very high conviction about their investing. Those were the ones who really were able to succeed in their game. So I was also trying fundamental investing for a large amount of time. I found it to be extremely complicated for me. I mean, there were so many moving parts. You're looking at macro, interest rate cycles, inflation cycles, what's happening to the government policy, what's happening to the USD INR. Then once you have a hang of all that, then you want to look at, you know, what is the universe of stock selection. Should I go for large caps, mid caps, small caps? What is the investing segment I should go for? Within each sector, then there is vast amount of data, you know, vendor data, client data, company specific data. Within each company valuation, several types of metrics, how to value that company. I mean, this, when you see the broker analyst report, the same company is valued at 200 also, and you know it's valued at 500 also. Where do you stand there? Management quality, ever-changing management quality. We've seen good management becoming bad and bad management becoming good. Time frames, how long to hold? I mean, we are all human and we need to have some time frames in mind as to how long to hold. Liquidity flows were an important parameter. Sometimes there is shortage of liquidity in the market. I mean, that is affecting the valuations. You know, although the fundamentals may be saying something else, but if there's no liquidity, they don't work. Entry exit decisions of investing, you know, how precisely can you really define those? Portfolio construction, another challenge, you know, concentrated portfolios, diversified portfolios, or various different weighted allocations, how to do that. Several known risks, unknown risks, so entirely a whole gamut of things which at least I was not able to, you know, put my finger on. And the learning was that success was largely dependent upon the ability to handle the complex multivariable environment and stay disciplined about it. Those who are able to do it are able to do this well. Right. Now, within the trading framework, which I predominantly did over the last couple of decades, is again the complexity is reasonably high. You know, watching many markets, for instance. I mean, if you're suppose an index trader or something like that, you're watching the Dow, you're watching the Hang Seng, you're sleeping at 2 in the night, waking up at 6:30 in the morning, watching SGX. Again, universe for stock selection. You're getting, you know, some kind of trading trigger in 50 stocks. How are you going to choose which ones you're going to trade, right? What is the criteria for your selection? Maybe in a back test you will find that you could have picked, you know, some stocks which have given you a multi-bagger return, even in trading. But then in real trading, how would you have picked them? Again, which time frames to trade? You know, hourly, monthly, weekly, daily. What is the time frame of trading that you want to do? Money management and position sizing became very important here. Without that, the entire construct becomes meaningless. Then transaction and impacts costs can be very high. So if you're looking for, you know, very low time frame of trading, then maybe if you do like a few hundred trades a week or something like that, then at some point of time when you're scaling up, the transaction or the impact cost may become material to your performance. Scalability of strategy again is very important to the extent that what you may be able to do with 5 lakh rupees, you may not be able to do with 5 crores or may not be able to do with 50 crores then. So what your strategy is should, maybe when you're starting to do it, should at least let you go 50 to 100 times more than where you are right now. That would be at least a scale that you can absorb. Again, entry exit decisions, trading edge, you may have found a trading edge which is trading right now, but will it sustain 4 or 5 years later, 10 years later, next year? Again, known risks, unknown risks. So success here again in the technical side, the trading side was highly dependent upon clearly defined and risk managed strategies and the discipline to execute them. The execution part actually is one of the most important parts here. In investing, a bit of execution here or there does not make so much of a difference because you are on a longer time frame. But here in trading, that is very key. So basically, across my experience of investing and trading, the two themes that were sort of coming out, the common successful mantra was simplicity and discipline. If you had simplicity in your core design and if you had discipline to execute it, that seemed to be a winning combination. And it was clear to me that most strategies will work well. Even simple strategies can work very well, complex strategies can also work very well. So 80% of the game is probably discipline and behavior, and only 20% is strategy. You will find that everybody is running after strategy, looking for newer strategies every month, and you know, once it stops working for some time, people jump to the third strategy and fourth strategy. But that is not really the way to win this game. I mean, the strategy is not so important. Behavior at stress points seem to be the key differentiator between the successful accounts that we had at our broking house. I mean, how do traders and those investors behave when they're pushed against the wall? That was the key sort of differentiator in terms of how good decisions they were able to make. So the trick actually was to find out about yourself, about the trader, about the investor, and see what style would suit you the best. So for myself, I thought of this framework that I was not very keen to do a fundamental or a value-based approach. So, so the plan of action that for me was to seek a non-emotional and systematic way of investing, because I realized that when I am pushed against the wall and I am in a stressful situation, I am not able to take good decisions. So that was a learning for myself about myself, and the way to counter that was to bind myself in a framework where I can just once the framework is decided, I can just blindly execute it, right? So use the best practices of a combined approach from investing and trading. So you could use tenets of trading, like letting your profits run, not letting your losses go deepen, and from the investing side you can bring in the tenets of portfolio allocation and creating balanced portfolios. Then the plan of action here is that to find an edge in the market. So if you can find some edge in the market and repeat that process infinitely, that can be a winning combination. Position sizing, risk management, we've already talked about. That was to be the centerpiece of the design, because the strategy is not so important, but how you're going to design your system, that is very important. Then people run a lot of back tests on historical data. Whenever you find some edge, you want to run a back test and see how it has performed. Sometimes that back test tends to become like a curve fitting mechanism. So you'll run thousands of back tests, you'll maybe do some kind of optimization, and it's actually a curve fit of 10, 15, 20 years of data that you may have seen, and it may seem that you have found the gold mine, but that may not be so. So what has worked in the last 15 years may or may not work in the future. And the last but the most important decision was what should be the strategy. Should it be fundamentally driven or price based? This is basically a framework for what I thought would be a good way to look at it. It may not be suitable for you, but the crucial decision between fundamental and price action based strategy for me was that on fundamental based strategy, one forecasts the performance of the assets, right? The management and the sector based on your own assumptions. So you assume that this is going to work like this, the management is going to behave like this is how the growth is going to come about. So it's kind of my own individual psychology that I'm projecting onto what is going to happen. Whereas in price action based strategy, I am following the price action, right, which is itself dependent upon the market participants' behavior. So I am not really forecasting anything there. I am allowing the market to tell me what I should be doing, right? So it is kind of individual psychology versus mass psychology. In value or fundamental based strategies, even if you find value, like there were some examples that cash is less than the market cap, or cash is more than the market cap. I mean, how will you profit from it? Only when the price action is there. You may have found the gold mine in a value stock, but unless the price action comes around, it is useless, right? So here in price action based strategies, the price movers, the stocks which are moving, they are not dependent upon the value to profit from, right? In software terms, there is something called WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get, right? In fundamental based strategies, you kind of keep guessing, and there is some lag in bull and bear markets. You kind of keep guessing what is going to happen. Whereas in price action based strategy, the action is right in front of you. There is no guessing in there. Right? The plan is crystal clear, the action is crystal clear, and the results are there in front of you. When the liquidity flows reverses, like we have seen very recently in the last couple of years, small cap, the liquidity went out of small caps. Fundamentals take a back seat. However good the fundamentals may be at that point of time, if the liquidity is not flowing in that direction, nothing will work. Price action is inherently decided by the liquidity flows, which is what we call as momentum, right? So to sum this up, for me, it kind of fundamental based strategies to me were saying that it is almost like I can say I know more than the market and I can lead the market. The market doesn't know what I know, right? Whereas in price action based strategies, the summary was, it was like Bhav Bhagwan Che, the Gujarati saying that price is God. I will follow the market and the price is encompassing whatever is needed to be encompassed at that point of time. So that was a kind of comparison that was there, and for me it was clearly in base of price-based strategy that which I could understand. So I have been following this, what is called as the momentum investing style. Very simply, it is buying high and selling higher. Against the conventional wisdom of buying low and selling high, what we do is we buy high and sell higher. We sit in cash when there's no opportunity. Like in last 2 years in small caps, mid caps, there was hardly any opportunity. So there were periods where the cash portion was very high in our portfolios. We chase trends and we ride winners and ditch losers early. So this is essentially what momentum investing in the way we are doing it can be summarized as. Just like value and fundamental investing can be done in 50,000 ways, some may be basing it on earnings based, earnings growth based, or sum of parts, those kind of things. Similarly, momentum investing also can be done in many ways, and this is basically how we are doing this. So very simply put together, my strategy is just this: buy what is going up and sell what is going down. I mean, it may sound silly and stupid, but this is what it is. So let's now look at 2 examples of very simple strategies. One is a relative momentum strategy and one is an absolute momentum strategy. When you go through the example, it will be very clear what these are. These are all very simple things. So let's say these are the rules for this particular example, that we have a portfolio of 20 stocks, all equally weighted, and let's say we choose them only from the CNX 200 universe. So what is the price today versus the price which was 12 months back? That gives you the rate of change of that stock, and you rank those 200 stocks. Some stock has 100% ROC, some stock has 50%, 10%, minus 20%, so on and so forth. So let's choose the top 20 stocks from this list, and that is our portfolio to start with. Okay, equally weighted, 5% each, we start the stock. And the rule to exit is that once, and we do this every month. Okay, so let's go here. So we started with 200 stocks. We did a ROC ranking and chose the top 20. Let's say we are in January 2018. At the end of January 2018, we again do this calculation for 12-month period and again come up with the ranking. The stocks which were there in the original ranking, if they have not dropped below 40, for instance, these are just some arbitrary numbers that I have taken to show you the simplicity of this kind of investing. If it has not dropped below 40, we will retain them. If they have dropped below 40, we will exit them and replace that cash that we have raised by exiting by the newer top ranks of that month. Got it? Anybody who's not understood this? So we are taking the top 20 and the next month again doing the ranking. If they have not dropped below 40, we are retaining them. If they have dropped below 40, we are exiting and replacing with new entrants in that. And that is all that we are doing in this strategy. I mean, it cannot get simpler than this. And you keep running this every month. Every month you keep doing this, and over a 5-year period, this is September 13 to August 18. August 18 because this is from my presentation from last year. I couldn't update this, but in these 5 years, the CAGR here was 31%, just based on this simple strategy, where you had to do maybe like 10 minutes of work a month. Just do that on an Excel sheet or maybe on some online software, ranking and replacing. I'm not saying it will keep working all the time, but just an example. Drawdown was just 22%, 137 trades over 5 years, hardly anything, right? Average hold of 5 months, winning 62% times. This is the most key of every quant strategy. Average win to average loss. So every stock that won almost won 4 times more than the average loss, right? So this is A relative momentum because we are comparing the momentum of each stock versus the rest of the group. Hence the word relative momentum. Now let's and this is the some of the winners and losers. So Eicher Motors 390%, SRF on those 5 years of study. You see there are several multi-baggers. And there are several losers also, but again, as we have seen, the ratio of the winning quantum to the losing quantum is very, very stark. 1:4 kind of ratio. The advantage here is that the losers will get exited from your system automatically every month. And the winners will keep staying there until they become a loser. So there is no guessing about, when to exit. When should a stock come into your portfolio, so on and so forth. Okay, let's take another example. So this example is about absolute momentum. Here we are not comparing the stock to the bunch of the CNX 200 group or any other group. We are saying, let's take the entire universe of NSE stocks and choose 20 stocks equally weighted. And simply the buy rule is when the price exceeds 200 DMA. Everybody understand what's 200 DMA? 200 days moving average. Simple 200 days moving average. Price exceeds 200-day moving average, I want to buy the stock. Price goes below 200-day moving average, I want to sell the stock. We add a whiplash filter because sometimes the price will keep moving around 200 DMA and giving you a profit and loss there, small. So we're saying that 200 DMA and 5%, which whenever price crosses that. So 200 DMA plus 5%, whenever price crosses that, I want to buy. 200 DMA minus 5%, whenever price crosses that, I want to sell. Okay? And let's say we choose a liquidity filter of 1 crore of turnover minimum, and I'm not interested in stocks which are doing below that, just to take out all the these very small penny stocks from the list. And if there is no opportunity like this, the money will sit in interest bearing instruments, expenses are built in, and let's see what are the results here. So 200 DMA strategy over 15-year period this study has run. CAGR of 25%. Drawdown of 57% mainly because of 2008, where the market itself was down by more than that. 461 trades over a period of 15 years. Hardly 30 trades a year. Average holding period of 11 months. Sorry for the typo. Winning percentage only 31%. Now this is the tough part. You're doing 461 trades, but only 31% of them are winning trades. So every 10 trades, 3 are winners, 7 are losers. But each of those winners is a 117% winner versus each of those losers which is only 13% loser. So the entire game is of math. How much is your winning trades, how much are your losing trades, and each winning trade, how many times the profit factor, what we call, is the, here again you can see the kind of winners you have here. And if you reflect back on just the simple rules that we have used for this study, a 200 DMF rule. I mean, how much more simpler can it get? Kaveri Seeds 900%, Marksons 900%. See the kind of returns that a stock can give you even with very simplistic models. And losers of course are there, 40%, 30%, but nowhere in comparison to the large winners. So in these two examples, some assumptions are there. Like in CNX 200 case, there may be a survivorship bias error. What we are taking now as CNX 200 may not have existed 5 years back. So there may be some error because of that. Dividends we have not included in this. Transaction costs have been assumed that of discount brokerages, includes all statutory costs though. Slippages are not assumed. Taxes or advisory fees are not included. Some real world costs are there, but it won't make a whole lot of difference to the basic premise that we are getting at. So what we have seen that is that simplicity and discipline, when you combine them, you can get explosive results. You don't have to be complicated. Now this is another thing, that simple may not be easy, right? So you may think that, okay, I'm going to run 3 miles a day. It's a very simplistic kind of a goal. It's not easy though. right? So what is simple may not be easy, and discipline certainly is not easy, that we all know, right? So our minds tend to sort of steer away from both of them. We want complexity, we want indisciplined kind of activity. And on the flip side, you can see that complex stories will sell very easily. You create a whole jargon of things and 50,000 moving parts in a story, and suddenly it sounds very exciting, and it feels like something's going to work here. And being hopeful is also very easy. Sensex will reach 1 lakh, or Yes Bank will reach 1,000. Hope is a hopium trade basically. So when our stocks are moving down, our hope becomes in a complex story. We tend to stick on to something. So some stock is coming down, we'll say, nahi, uski to real estate hai, it will come back. Some other stock is going down, the management quality is very good, it will revive. So we pin ourselves to some variable and we keep a hope trade alive there. And of course the common narrative, everything will be all right in 3-5 years. Something drops, I mean most of the analysts and advisors also will say, hold on, everything will go all right in 3 to 5 years, why are you worried? So these are just stories basically. Another great learning that I had from my experience was that one of the key factors in successful versus failed investing is the contribution of how you are exiting. The exit from a trade or an investment is one of the very key factors in determining your success. So if you can master that exit, then entry is not really a problem. I mean, whether you enter a trade at 20 or 40 or 60, if that stock is going to 600, it is not so much of a problem. But if the stock is coming from 600 to 50 and you have not exited at 500, 400, 300, then that is a problem, right? So exiting either very early in profit, the stock has just started to go up and you are exiting very early, mera double ho gaya, I want to get out, but stock may be a 20 bagger, right? Or very late in loss, this I am sure everybody has seen, and both actually, both, I'm party to both of these myself as many times as well. So these are the biggest cause of underperformance. I mean, selling too early or selling too late. And these both happen because we are human beings and we are emotional, and we get married to our stocks. We read so much about our stocks, we will research each and everything about that sector, about management, about that particular segment of the market, or we'll believe some stories and we'll keep hoping that things will turn around. So the non-complexity of the exit decision, if you are able to create a framework where you say, I am going to exit if this condition is satisfied, or I am going to exit if that condition is satisfied. If that framework is at least clear in your mind, you still may be able to execute it with some discipline. But if that framework does not exist, Yes Bank falls from 400 to 200, if that framework does not exist in your mind, you will not be able to react. You will be like a deer in the car's headlights. What has struck me now? 400 to 200, now how should I sell? But if you had a framework that no, I am going to get out of a stock if it goes below 20%, I am going to get out, then regardless of what may happen, you may have that ability to execute it because you've thought through it. Right? So a simple strategy is one that will remove ambiguity. I believe one should be removing ambiguity from your process. It may or may not be the way I am doing it because I am doing it extremely simply, but you may add, maybe some complexity to it or fundamental angle to it, but it should remove ambiguity. Even in most fundamental investing technique styles, you can create frameworks where ambiguity may be removed. It should give you sound sleep. If your investments are making you uneasy or anxious, then there is no point of doing that actually. I mean that investing is one part of your life, it should not become your life. Right? You are investing so that your life will be better someday because of that investment. But let it not, consume you while you are investing. It has low pain to gain ratio. Again, it's kind of similar to sound sleep, that it should not be in a way where you have a lot of pain in making that gain. That gain is not really worth gaining if it has taken you through a whole lot of pain and maybe through some health issue also because of that. Has high returns to time spent ratio. So if you are able to spend very little time and generate reasonable return out of that, that is much better than spending all your time and just maybe adding a few percent here or there. So why not live your life and have time in your control rather than making the best use of the returns to time ratio, even if it comes at a cost of some lower performance. Okay, somebody is making 20%, you make 18%, that's okay. I mean, there is no race going on, right? So let us now observe some random charts. I want you to look at these charts and see how you would have played them in hindsight if you had a choice. So let's say this is Vodafone Idea, right? So this is about 13 years of Vodafone Idea. If you buy and hold, if you had bought at IPO, and 13 years later you see where you are sitting and you had the world's best multinational brand running this company now, and they entered here. This is their entry candle. So that so much for quality and brand, right? Because there are so many other variables. Quality and brand by itself cannot do much. So if you had some framework of exit, maybe you would have exited when this drop came. Suppose you even held through this itself was difficult to hold through. But again, maybe suppose you are entered here, maybe you would have sold here, maybe you have sold here. But definitely your framework would not have let you stay till 2 rupees. At 20 rupees also, I remember before the rights issue came, there were people like कि अब क्या जाएगा इसमें 20 तो हो गया 200 का. But 90% drops since then as well, right? Graphite India, very recent, phenomenal rise from 2017, 100 to 1100, 11 times, back to 300. You need to have a framework to exit. You made 11x in case even if you did get in before 2017, you made 11x. Do you have the heart to sit on a 70% drop there? Especially if you are, if you have seen, the 1100 rise. So you need to have a framework there. Again, Rain Industries, similar to graphite, 40 rupees to 480, again 11, 12x. I mean, these are kind of mind-boggling returns. Why do you want to give it all back to the market? Once you have some returns, there should be a way to lock in some part of your profit at least, if not all. Nobody can sell at the top and nobody can buy at the bottom. But even if you are able to get some portion of this rise, some portions of the trends if you are able to get, that is good enough. You don't have to maximize the entire rally. In some other cases, they have never dropped so far. So if you had entered 4 or 5 years back, and if your strategy exit rules were, even a 20-30% drop from the top, you'll get out. That has not happened. You would still be sitting on it. Again, Naukri, Info Edge, going up. Bajaj Finance, of course, everybody's favorite. So the point is that seeing these trends, you can easily capture some portions of these gains without giving it up if you have a framework in mind. So what did we observe here? That there are strong trends and some parts of the trends can give us good profits. We should not get very greedy कि मेरे को बिल्कुल एंड तक ही टॉप पे ही बेचना है जाके. So long only portfolio makes money in uptrends, obvious. But if the stock is coming down, like we saw in Idea or some other cases, stock is coming down, not only are you losing capital, you are losing the opportunity for that capital. It's a double whammy. Your capital is also going, and in case you were able to take that capital and deploy it somewhere, that opportunity is also going. So it's a double whammy. Downtrends are of course very, very painful, stressful. They will ruin basically whatever good else is happening in your life. They're not worth it. Capital gets destroyed if uptrend doesn't come back. So we need to get out of losers. You cannot sit on a loser. You need to devise a system where you will not sit on a loser. So can we achieve the following with simple rules? Always have mostly winners in your portfolio. Never have losers for too long in the portfolio. No worries on allocation within the portfolio, how much to allocate. No worry on how long the profits will run, because that's your system you can design a system that I will not take a profit until such and such condition happens. Clearly defined exit policies and exit points. This is where I want to exit. If this happens, I will exit here. If that happens, I will exit there. Few minutes of work per week is good enough for these kind of strategies. Total peace of mind and good sleep. So yes, we can achieve all these with simple rules. Some fund managers, star fund managers, will enjoy the limelight with some superior return. That's okay. Why you have to compete with them? Somebody is getting 22% return. Let them enjoy it. You get 18, you be happy with that. If it can generate that kind of return with simplicity and good sleep, why not? So in last 3.5 years, we have run several such simple strategies, and this is where we are standing right now. So we started in April 16, and it was a good year to start, fortunately. So 16, 17 and 17, 18, first half at least of 17, 18 were very nice. But what I want to also show here is that so these are our products, various products, momentum products only, and these are some small cases. But what I want you to see is that this particular product, MI25, is a small cap oriented product. It has 25 small caps invested in a momentum style, right? It is still up 140% after the small cap disaster in 3.5 years. How is that happening? Because it went up a couple of 100% and there was a drawdown of 30% from there. But it exits from the stocks once the exit criteria is met. There is no love and there is no marriage to any stock. I seriously sometimes don't know what the company does when it comes into my filter and I buy it. I sometimes don't know what that company does. I only need to see that the stock is liquid, the stock is trading according to whatever the filter is there, and invest in it. So summing up, some key parameters for you for developing your strategy and framework is what do you want to pursue. So it's fundamental versus technical versus combined. I mean, Yuresh Bhai does techno funda. So basically get your ideas clear. What do you want to do? It is not like this month I'll do this and next month I'll try something else. That should not be the case. Once and for all, you decide what you want to do. Discretionary versus non-discretionary. So you could keep things discretionary if you are finding that you are able to do discretionary things. I could not, so I moved totally into non-discretionary. Which instruments you're going to trade? Are you going to do futures? Are you going to do cash? Are you going to do India market, US market combined? What time frames are you going to trade or invest? Asset allocation, not just within the equity market, but across your financial portfolio, how much debt to have, how much gold to have. That's a very important component which most people don't really adhere to. But I'm a big proponent that you must have 10 to 20% of gold in your portfolio. So these are the kind of things that you can think of, and these 4 questions, they should be always be answered in your mind. What to buy, when to buy, how much to buy and when to sell. If you are able to answer these 4 questions, your strategy is done. You will be very successful in whatever strategy you are deploying if these 4 questions are answered for you. So this is all that I had, and I thank you for your opportunity.